Bill, welcome to the state of Idaho.
Enjoyed having another visit here, Ken.
Yeah, it's a great chance to have you out here. You know, usually we film these Gun Guys episodes at the ranch in Texas or sometimes up at Berryville at the shops. Glad you got a chance to come out here. You'll notice the scenery's a little different than what you have in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Right behind us, we have U.S. Highway 93, which runs from Canada to Mexico.
Wow.
And then also the Salmon River, famous Salmon River, which your buddy Tom has been trying to get a salmon online, but he's still working at it.
Yeah, hadn't had any success yet, I don't think.
One of the things we want to talk about today, as part of the Gun Guys episode, folks, is the 7 shooter sins, or we call them the shooter 7 sins, that it's pretty common. We see it all the time. I saw it a lot in the training industry. You see it from not only the shooters world, but you see it business-wise. And for example, one of the classic ones that I think has become really bad, and we may talk about it more, is this obsession of thinking about or preparing or spending money to pursue something that's called a possibility, and it's not a probability. People will go to great lengths and say, well, hey, I may have to make a headshot at 50 yards in a self-defense situation. And the truth of the matter is it a possibility? Yeah. Is it a probability? No. We know that in the real world, over 90% of self-defense shootings, regardless of occupation, military, law enforcement, or private sector, is 10 yards and less, heavy on less. So you can spend a lot of money and a lot of time and say, I'm preparing for possibilities, you know, and you look at some of the equipment that's being sold and the guns people are carrying, and you're like, well, what in the world are you thinking about? That's chasing a possibility. It's not preparing for probabilities. So give that some serious thought. Again, and I really do believe, Bill, the internet world has contributed a lot to this, what I call chasing possibilities and not very well focused on probabilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both agree, Ken. In the real world, you need to train with the gun that you actually carry. You don't need to have a carry gun and a range gun. You know, you need to basically train with what you carry. All that within 10 yards. I mean, do the bulk of your training in that 3 to 10 yard range, you know, and focus on doing scenarios that could potentially be shots that you might have to make in the real world. Yep. And spend most of your money on ammunition. You know, yep. I mean, once you get the carry gun you like and you're confident it's reliable and everything like that, I mean, instead of buying more fancy guns and optics and all this stuff, I think you're better off to buy more ammo.
Yeah, and I'll give you a good example. This kind of an analogy in this. Lots of people buying guns and they put a light on the pistol. And my attitude is, if your lifestyle dictates it, say for example, you work or live in an area where you're going to be out at night most of the time, or you're whatever. For example, the gun that's my nightstand gun has got a light on it. That makes sense. That's a probability. If I need the gun at night, I need to be able to see what I'm shooting at, or a target ID in. But to carry it every day, particularly most people don't really need a light on their gun, but they put it on because that's what the cool kids have.
Yeah.
Now you've got, why carry something that you really don't, say, well, there's a possibility I might need. Yeah, but probability is you won't.
Yeah.
So, okay, you got one there, Bill.
And we're all guilty of this. When you go out to do your training, do your practice, practicing what we're good at instead of what we suck at.
Oh,
I mean,
you're right. We're all guilty of that.
We're all guilty of that. We go out and let's just say for example, in my case, I'm not the world's greatest weekend shooter, so I don't do a lot of weekend shooting when I go training. When in reality, I should do a lot of it because that's my weak link basically on my skill level. Everybody's guilty of it. They go out and okay, they're good at shooting fast up close, so they do a lot of shooting fast up close. Or they're, somebody that's good at accuracy stuff like you are and stuff like that, probably going to practice a lot of 20-yard stuff, things like that. But whatever it is that's you're kind of weakest at, that's a self-defense, skill, you need to focus every time you go over to the range and go to practice. Shoot those drills, test those skills, because you're never going to get better at it if you don't train.
And the comment, I'm sure you've got it, people say, well, man, how do you do that so well? And the answer is because you practice it.
Exactly.
And yeah, I sadly, I don't think any of us are immune from violating this particular rule.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's just, but it's one that you got to focus on from time to time. All right, I got one for you, Bill. And this is shooter sin number 3. And again, we all kind of suffer from this one, and that's the importance of getting a good grip on the gun on the draw in the holster. And that's followed up by a good firm firing grip. Man, it haunts me and haunts everybody. And I'm amazed at the amount of people who carry guns who don't practice drawing.
Yeah.
And I tell people, of all the skills that are most perishable, everybody thinks about all these other things. Getting a good grip on the gun when you draw is a terribly perishable skill. And if you don't practice it, you can lose it real fast. And as we both know, if you screw up and get a bad grip, it isn't going to get better. And so I tell everybody, go into the range and, for example, I have guys say, well, I can't shoot in any place but an indoor range and I'm not allowed to draw. Well, that's unfortunate. But you can go home, unload your gun, and practice dry firing from the draw at home, and it doesn't cost you a thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the other one, which I think you and I both have talked about repeatedly, and I think the guy who probably earmarked this, that brought it to most of us in the shooting world's attention, who really hammered on this, was Rob Latham, is getting a firm grip.
A lot of people don't realize that your ability to control the movement of the gun under recoil, that's all dependent on how tight a grip you get on the gun. And let's face it, we would all like to think that we press the trigger perfect every time and we're not disturbing the sights because we got perfect trigger control. Well, that doesn't always happen for anybody, not a Rob Latham or you, Ken, or me or anybody else. The more firm grip you got on the gun, the more you can get by with slapping the trigger. I mean, it's harder to move the sights off target when you got a really firm grip on the gun as opposed to a loose grip and the gun's flipping all around.
Yeah.
And one last thing on this, it's like if you do draw and get that perfect grip and you start off, and let's say we're shooting a string that's 12 shots, we're shooting an El Pres. As you go along and after you did your reload or whatever, the natural tendency is to relax your grip.
Oh boy.
And what happens, you're shooting great, and then all of a sudden shots that you thought were gonna go in the middle, they're out 4, 5, 6 inches or whatever. And that happened because you relaxed your grip.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people ask about the grip, and there's so much, thanks to the internet and to a degree the training world, they've got these people, and I know everybody has an opinion, but one of them is that you grip the handgun. This kind of comes from the competition world to a degree. The pistol, let's say you've heard with 30% of your grip strength in the firing hand and 70 in your support, or 40 and 60, whatever. I don't teach that. I think it's baloney, and I'll tell you why. First off, guys say, well, you should use 30% grip strength. Well, how do you know if it's 30?
I don't even know what that is.
Know what it is. You grip the gun as firmly as you can. I tell people, think in the terms if you were putting a walnut between the heel of your hand and you're trying to crush the walnut. You want that, I call it a crush grip. Rob Latham explains it very well. And guys tell me, well, yeah, but I want my firing hand loose because I can move the trigger faster. Well, that's crap. Moving the trigger faster in the real world is not important. It's making sure the bullet goes where it needs to. So again, people get us obsessed with the speed thing, but the grip needs to be firm. And I'm a firm believer that you use equal, what I call crush on grip on the gun. If I'm only shooting, 2, 3, 4 shots, I don't have any problem. But say I'm doing a bill drill, the classic bill drill. Invariably, if I get into trouble, it's one of the last 2 or 3 shots in that. And I don't even realize it. I start relaxing. This first one's going right where you want, and you kind of think, oh, I got this made, and then you relax just a little bit, and things go south.
Yeah.
So practice and drawing. And the other thing about the draw is because we're all made different. And the other thing, by the way, as we get older, I like the term as we evolve, our ability to draw the gun. What holster worked when I was 25 doesn't work at 75 because my shoulder doesn't rotate like it should. So you probably need a holster if you can't get a natural firing grip. I see like I said, well, I'll adjust it as I get the gun out. No. So holsters are very important, and where you wear it, and most importantly, practice the draw so that you get that perfect grip, because you say, well, it's a okay grip. No, there's only one kind of good grip on a pistol, and that's a perfect grip.
Yeah, and one other thing, you talk about having a good holster, you got to have a good, stiff, thick belt. I've seen so many people come there and say they got their brand new whatever brand Sparks, whatever really nice holster, and they got it on some little flimsy belt they probably bought at Walmart. And the holster's flopping all around.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's critical to wear your gear on a good stiff belt so stuff stays where you put it.
Spot on. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about number 4 there, partner. You got an interesting one.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Basically, sin number 4, trying to buy skill. Okay, well, I'm going to be better, so I'm going to buy this gun and this holster and that holster, and I'm going to evolve from iron sights to dot sights and all that in an effort to become a better shooter by just spending more money and getting fancier gear and trying every kind of piece of gear in the world out there. I mean, look at what a lot of the top shooters shoot as far as competition, and especially what the top trainers use. And you'll see there's kind of correlation. I mean, there's lots of 1911s, there's lots of Glocks, there's lots of SIGs, and most of them with iron sights on them. It's just like, pick one, that you can shoot well with, and train hard with that gun and buy more ammunition instead of another widget.
Boy.
I mean, all these name brand guns have evolved to the point now. I mean, they're almost all of them are good and reliable. They're accurate enough for self-defense purposes, and learn how to shoot it. And after you've put a lot of rounds down range with a specific gun, let's say you start out with a Glock 19, and like me, after a while, I realized I really don't like a Glock because I don't like that grip angle, and so I can switch to, say, a SIG 320, for example, or Walther PPQ, something like that, whoever the latest new one is. And I shoot it a lot better than I do the Glock. And it's primarily because I'm used to the 1911 grip angle, and those guns have a similar grip angle to the 1911. Wow. And I find out just to switch from one base gun to another base gun, now I'm better. Okay, so now I really focus on training with that gun, rather than, I need the latest, greatest holster. I need to put this dot sight or that dot sight on it, or whatever. Focus on a good basic carry gun that's proven, by trainers and on the street and by competition shooters, and just put the rounds down range.
Yep. And again, I don't think this is a new trend in the shooting world. If you go back and look at what was going on, back in the mid part of the 20th century, you saw that trend a bit too. I think shooters by nature will always say, if I can buy skill, I'll buy it. And the truth of the matter is, the one way you get good, and that's called practice.
Yeah. I mean, as long as your gun functions reliably, it's accurate enough for the use that you're trying to put it to, and it has a decent trigger and decent sights on it. Ammo is the next important thing. Buy more ammo, spend more time at the range.
Yeah. Number 5 of the shooter sins that I think is probably a little bit newer, generation-wise, is this obsession that thinking speed will make up for accuracy. And I tell people there's kind of a backstory behind it, in that people don't realize when practical shooting started, really kicked off in the 1970s. Colonel Jeff Cooper is the guy that brought practical shooting to the world, mainly through the introduction of Ep56. And he used a scoring system called the Comstock scoring system. And the Comstock scoring system is your score is divided by time to give you basically a points per second scoring method. And at the time, it was pretty revolutionary. It has haunted us to this day, and I'll tell you what the reason is. I'll give you an example. You take the El Presidente, one of the best known skill drills out there, and of course, sadly, there's probably 50 variations of them, and none of them quite what Cooper wanted or introduced. But this give you the classic one. 10 meters, the 3 targets that are spaced 3 meters apart edge to edge. You start with your back to targets, you turn, you fire 2 shots in each target, or reload 2 shots in each target. Cooper's formula was that if you shot that, there was a possible 60 points. If you shot it clean and you did it in 10 seconds, your score divided by time would be a 6.0. And his system was you move the decimal point 1 point to the right, so you had a score of 60 by Comstock scoring system. Now, if you shot that same drill in 8 seconds. You shot it clean, but 2 seconds faster, and you do the formula, your score comes out at 7.5, move the decimal point 75. You got a higher score. So candidly, speed was more important than accuracy. Now, if you want to take it to the nth degree, which is where it's evolved now with this obsession with speed, we always hear about that quote, I call it the mythical 4-second El Pres. If you shoot an El Presidente in 4 seconds, and you can drop 20 points, you can 4 complete misses, and your score divided by time gives you a 10.0, or if you move decimal point, a score of 100 points with 4 complete misses. That has followed us through the competition arena, which, by the way, haunts everything in the shooting world today. So the emphasis on shooting fast has reached a point, and you've heard it, it's speed and accuracy. You always hear that, oh, it's speed and accuracy. No, it isn't. It's accuracy with speed. And I see it, I think it's probably one of the biggest flaws in the shooting world today is everybody wants this pursuit of speed, and sadly, most people give up accuracy that they should not in order to chase the speed demon.
We see it all the time, every time, whether it's at a match or or just people, out training, or out shooting with our buddies. Everybody's worried about speed.
Yeah, what was your time?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you don't hit anything very well. So, what you got down for number 6 there?
Oh yeah, the obsession with tuning your gun to the point that it doesn't work anymore. There's a lot of these people out there that, especially 1911 shooters, they think the gun's gonna recoil softer, and it's gonna shoot, as they say, flatter. It's gonna get back on target faster by running like really light recoil springs, and they go to the point where they get such light recoil spring that now they're having trouble with the gun completely closing. If there's a little bit of dirt in the chamber, the round's a little bit,
out of spec.
A little bit out of spec or whatever like that. And, the gun's dry or whatever. In reality, the number one thing you want your gun to do is function every time. We all like accuracy. We all like these great trigger pulls. We all like great sights on our guns and all that stuff. But let's face it, if the gun doesn't go bang every time, it's a pretty useless paperweight, And if you start out with a gun that's reliable and you start dicking with it, changing this, changing that, lighter hammer spring to try to get a lighter trigger pull, lighter recoil spring to try to get the gun to shoot flatter, whatever, or make it easier to chamber rounds, or, whatever your purpose is, it's all a detriment of reliability, when, in reality, and it really doesn't matter what the platform is on a semi-auto handgun. The recoil spring you want in the gun is the heaviest spring that you can have in that gun, and you can shoot that gun weak-handed with a reasonably loose grip, and the gun always, with one round of magazine, the gun always goes to slide stop.
Slide lock.
It's got to go to slide lock every time. So you test it with the weakest grip you're ever going to fire the gun with, and if it goes to slide lock with the load that you're shooting, then you're good to go. And the heaviest spring that will pass that test makes the gun function better throughout. The heavier recoil spring you got, the more force it's got to pick up that round of the magazine and get it in the chamber.
Yeah. And that's it. You're spot on. Most of these guys are concerned about softening the recoil stroke of the gun. The recoil spring's got 2 jobs. One is to kind of slow down the slide coming back. What people realize, it really doesn't retard it that much. Actually, the camming action of cocking the hammer is more to slowing the gun coming back than recoil spring.
Yep.
What its real job is chambering a fresh round and getting the gun into battery. And when these guys start cutting springs, they don't seem to grasp that. I'll give you a good, interesting analogy. When I first started in this business, like you, it was a 1911 world. In the 1911s of, say, the 1970s and 80s and stuff, you had Colt and then Springfield Armor were the major vendors. And let's be honest, they weren't building the best guns historically. There were a lot of issues. And so I can remember, you can too, malfunctions were really a common problem. And part of the problem was guys were like, I'm going to tune my gun. And the classic one, and I've always said, Dremel tools should require a $200 tax stamp from the BATF to possess. Because remember how everybody I'm going to throat my gun. Well, most of the throat problems had nothing to do with why it wasn't working. It was other issues, shitty magazines back then, and extractor problems. But I went through, let's say a number of decades where in the training business, you saw guys with 1911s in classes, and a lot of them didn't work, and hence the guns got a reputation of being terribly unreliable. Now, fast forward, when I quit training, the last, say, 5 years in the training business, probably the last decade, I was using a Glock because that's what the world uses. I was teaching with a Glock 19 or 17 or whatever. You use what the students are using. I started to see, and you see it a lot now, the 1911s that weren't reliable is being replaced, but the Glocks aren't reliable. Not because it's not a reliable gun, it's because these guys tune them. Oh, I'm going to change springs. I'm going to change the striker spring to get a lighter trigger pull. I'm going to start making changes, and I now see Glocks that go click instead of bang on a pretty regular basis because somebody put aftermarket parts and tuned it to make it work better, and they don't. So now it's not uncommon, particularly in a training class, a lot of Glocks, and there's going to be a lot of Glocks that don't go bang. And it's not because there's anything wrong with the design. If you take the gun out of the box, probably one of the most reliable guns in the world. But after the guys tune them, not so much so. Shooter sin number 7 is kind of an interesting last one, and we both have some views on this, but the classic one is people choosing. These are guys that are in the shooter's world, but they choose and carry guns more as a lucky charm, as a talisman. They don't really think they're ever going to need it. So I'm going to take a gun that, for example, smaller is better for concealment. And they will always compromise for smaller in order to get something that's easier to carry. And the bottom line is they kind of regard a gun as like a rabbit's foot. It's my good luck charm. I don't really think I'm going to need it. And the problem with that is they don't practice with it, and they hardly ever get any training. And then the follow-up to that is, the real reason behind that is, deep down, I'll probably never need it. And that we know can be pretty false. And the follow-up on that is, well, I probably never need it, but if I do, I'll be able to rise to the occasion and do what's necessary.
Yeah, I'm going to shoot better than I would had I been training, just because of the stress of the situation.
Yeah, I'm going to be John Wick when the time comes. And I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I mean, look at the search for small little, what I call pocket rockets. Now, mind you, the marketplace has produced some real good ones, and I think the one we all would kind of look up to is, Sig Sauer, when they came out with that little 365, they hit that one out of the park. However, what we all know is little guns aren't easy to shoot well.
It's a lot harder to shoot well with a 365 than it is a 320.
Yeah, and it's like a Smith J-frames. We all carried them back in the day. There's hard guns to shoot well. And so consequently, I always tell people, you got to kind of look for what's the balance. A gun you actually can shoot well versus a gun that's easy to carry. And that really comes down to comfort. If it's not comfortable, you won't carry it. So the pursuit of finding a gun that is easy to carry and comfortable, yet something you shoot effectively, is a evolving process. And I think in your case, if you look at for example, the X9 family, you've evolved that way because of your own personal experiences. The original SF X9, the little compact gun, was kind of your effort to say, this does both. It gives me a gun I can shoot really well, and it's a gun that's comfortable to carry concealed.
Let's face it, any gun that's smaller than a Glock 19 size gun is not the easiest gun in the world to shoot. There's a huge difference in how well even well-trained people can shoot a Glock 19 size gun, and they can shoot like a SIG 365 size gun. If you're going to carry a 365 size gun, especially the one with a short sight radius, it just takes a little more training to be really proficient with it, as opposed to a gun that's more a Glock 19 or one of our EDC X9 size guns. Sorry folks, I'm just getting over the China virus and I still get this terrible chest congestion.
You mean the Kung Flu?
The Kung Flu, yeah.
And I've always said, if you practice with anything, you can get good with it. The problem is, the shooter sin number 7 is they choose guns for comfort, and they don't practice and they don't train with them. And man, that's
A bad combination.
a bad combination. So the shooter 7 sins, again, all of us suffer from to some degree. So think about it. How does it apply to you? And again, the bottom takeaway from this, if you don't practice, you're going to pay a price for it. So take it to the range, think about it, make it work. And oh, by the way, as you guys know, don't be afraid to make a comment. Let us know what you think, questions you might have, information you're interested in, and we'll try to address it and bring you the information and the insight that you're looking for. In the meantime, practice. Stay safe. We'll see you down the road.